Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review. Laughing because it's the first new release review since Oppenheimer on the channel. And this is going to be the spoiler-free review for The Creator, co-written and directed by Gareth Edwards, his first film since Rogue One. And my oh my, have I got a film to talk about for you, because I've been very lucky in seeing this film today at the BFO IMAX for a preview screening. Tate joined me as well. And before people are curious, we're going to do two reviews for this film. We're going to do the spoiler-free one now, which is before the film comes out. Then we are going to do a spoiler discussion once the film has been released. I know it's out tomorrow by the time this video goes up in the UK, but we'll probably do it at the end of the weekend or Monday or something. So there will be a date, TBC, and we're going to do a big in-depth spoiler discussion. We'll try and get another person on as well so we can get back to the routine, because things are very busy at the moment. But before I sort of keep apologising about not reviewing new releases, I do want to hear from people. So please do comment your thoughts on this film if you're looking forward to it, your thoughts on Gareth Edwards, your thoughts on original films, the year in cinema, some films you think we might have missed. We do have our monthly video where we go through all the watching. We have watched some new releases. It's just getting the reviews out, going to the screenings, press screenings early. It's a big commitment. I've not been able to do it. There's a lot going on in our own lives, so it's nice to be back on track. And we do, of course, know we've got the London Film Festival starting a week from today, but there's going to be a lot of new releases. So it's going to be a very, very busy month on the channel. But aside from that, let's talk The Creator. I mentioned this is spoiler-free. I'm not going to go too much depth into the story, because we're going to save that for the big discussion, but I'm going to do the usual, talk about my thoughts heading into the film, give some thoughts on the cast, the soundtrack, and also my overall thoughts on this, because I was completely blown away, which is a sign of where things are going to go. And shout out to Gareth Edwards, who's also from Warwickshire, flying that flag for our county, if that's even a thing. I think it's more of an American thing, but either side, it still makes it pretty fun, makes it more exciting to go to the cinema to watch a new film of his. And the fact someone local made a Star Wars film is still pretty exceptional as far as I'm concerned. But all that sort of stuff aside, my thoughts heading into this film. You may have just seen me hyping up Gareth Edwards. I was sold the moment we finally got an announcement he'd be doing a new film. The fact it would be a science fiction film. At the time of the announcement, Greg Fraser was on board. He's kind of still worked on this to an extent, but he didn't shoot the film. He did a lot of the pre-production stuff. There's so much amazing stuff to read up on this, by the way. But heading into this film, the last few months have been pretty tough on the industry. We know about the strikes, of course. We've got hopefully some good news with the WGA. But aside from that, there's not been as many big releases. There's been a lot of new releases. There's been a lot of dramas, independent films, but we haven't had that big blockbuster release. And my word, the shock a month ago when it came out that the budget for The Creator, a film which looks better than 90% of films released today, film that looks a lot better than $300 million films made today, was announced that it was made on a budget of $80 million. I could not believe this was real. I thought, this is Hollywood accounting. This is ridiculous. It looks incredible. The visuals, the trailer, the set pieces, the locations, the settings. I just thought, this is not an $80 million film. It looks like it should cost $200-300 million. And that's a massive selling point for me. A director that can effectively use a budget is clearly something. Shout out to ILM, who I'm going to talk about way more in this as well, for incredible visual effects to go with this film. And the story itself is something that I was fully invested in. The cast as well, John David Washington, I'm a big fan of his, and I'll give a little bit more thoughts on that and some of the ensemble too. But yeah, heading into this film, I'd say I was starved of a big release. My favourite kinds of films are big sci-fi adventures on the big screen, so I was sold on this from the premise. And with it being Gareth Edwards, I'm going to have that attachment. I'm going to go and watch the film. But I did not expect it to be not only as good as it was, I didn't expect it to be as hyped as I was heading into this film today. There was a buzz around it. And it's the fact it's on IMAX. It's the fact these stories are coming out. You bring in Hans Zimmer to be the composer. And the obvious thing for me, we don't get enough original films in the industry. I'm talking blockbuster original films. There's a lot of original films. There's a lot of great ones, but it's finding them, it's getting them distributed. And when they do come out, it's people turning up to go and see them. So that's why, I'm not going to do the whole spiel about this is why the state of the industry is this and this and this. All we can say is Barbenheimer has not changed the industry at all. It hopefully does in a really good way. But audiences are turning up. The audiences are there. They will turn up to the cinema if the right film is there for them to turn up to. And it's also a big push to that direction of people are tiring of genre films. I'm not going to name the obvious ones, but that is a very big thing that is happening. There's a decline of sorts, not saying there's an outright decline, but yeah, the audiences will go if you give them a reason to go. And this film has abundant of reasons to be seen on the big screen, starting off with that IMAX release as well. I'm always pushing the cinema experience. It's something I enjoy. It's something I like to get out, go to the cinema. I've not been to the cinema since Barbie in August. I know I saw that a bit later than everyone else. I don't really count the Ahsoka screening for the first 2 episodes, but I've not really been out. And there's been some great films like Ninja Turtles, something I really enjoyed. We've had a few other ones, a few delayed ones, US months ago, UK just come out here. So there has been films out at the cinema. But I want that reason to go, get in the seat, go to the IMAX, just do whatever you want to do, just have yourself a nice time. And I don't feel like we've really had that recently. It was so stacked in May and June that August has kind of fluttered out. I know there's a few things I missed, like Gran Turismo. I know it does have its fans. September very quiet. We've got Dune Delayed. So the state of the industry is really weird, and I know I've not really spoken about the creator yet, but there's this extra level of excitement for me is that because there's been so little out, I'm not comparing it to COVID, but with the strikes on, it's almost felt like we're waiting for that big film to come out again, just like 2020 stars John David Washington in the leading role too. So I'm on board for this. Everything's right, and part of me was worried, are they going to pull the plug on this film? We knew they would for Dune, and they did. We know they're keeping the Marvels, they're keeping Hunger Games, Wonka, and Aquaman 2 is apparently finally coming out in December. But we're just waiting for something else, and the creators come along, and I just think I was so in the zone on the approach to this. I was really excited today. I got the Godzilla top back on, fully in the mood. Gareth Edwards did a Q&A after the film. I couldn't unfortunately stay for that. I had to get home. So I was really good. I missed that. I've been very lucky to have been to Q&As with him in the past, and I did do the press conference last week where there was some amazing behind the scenes, which I'll probably talk about more on Sunday. But sort of segueing away from the hype and me clearly being excited to go to the cinema to watch this film, I want to talk about the film itself because I've come out of the screening to seeing some glowing reviews everywhere else, and I was really surprised in a really great way that I didn't know how this film would go down. I wouldn't say it starts out clunky, but there's a familiarity to this film, and it's too easy to say something like Rogue One. It's the same director, it's science fiction, when you've got some of the same creative team, the same production design has been brought on board, same concept artist, I believe, is in the lead with it. You've of course got ILM as well. There's certainly Kiri Hart as well, co-producer. There's a lot of carryover from Rogue One, which is great for me as a massive fan of that film. And again, a fan of the director. Even some familiar names from Gareth Edwards past. Ken Watanabe's finally come back after doing Godzilla with him. It was just... The film as a whole felt very familiar in a really unique, original way. And talking my experience for the sort of 2 hours I watched it, I felt like, this sounds really bad, if you've seen the film you'll probably think, what on earth's he on? I wanted to be there. Like, it's one of the first times in a while I've watched a film, probably the first time since Dune, where I've been like, I want to be in that world. I want to be there. Not like just on set, like literally exist within that. I know this is a AI army versus humans of sorts, but there was just something so originally interesting and unique that I haven't felt like that in a while. And I've got a second batch of tickets to go this week with one of my parents, which is very exciting as well. Straight back to the IMAX. But as an overall, before I delve into the little things, I was blown away by this. As I said, I thought I'd like it. I said, yeah, it's my cup of tea. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. It's probably sitting in the top 5 of my films of the year so far. I've got a lot to catch up with, but I did not expect that from this. I just thought, I'm hoping to get a good solid blockbuster, which is, we've got way beyond that. To the point where I was almost crying. Multiple scenes at the end, which really caught me off guard. Didn't expect I'd be getting that. So if I'm going to segue away from that, I want to talk about some of the reasons this one works. Now, I mentioned John David Washington. As I said, Black Klansman is probably the favourite film of his I've seen. I know he was in, I forgot the TV series of The Rock, Ballers. Of course, he was in Tenet as well. He's been in a fair things, Malcolm and Marie. I really liked him, and I loved him in this film. He has shown once again that he's a great leading man. He has that natural charisma to lead. And I think the pairing he has with a very young actress in this film, I'm not going to talk too much about that character. I know you might have seen the trailers. That's something I have to save till Sunday, because I was blown away by this duo together. They didn't just compensate each other, they gravitated each other's scenes, they gravitated their performances, and in turn they gravitated film together. So I'm going to talk about their relationship more so on Sunday, or when we do the spoiler discussion, sorry. But the characters is something I was slightly worried about, because again, with my history with Gareth Edwards, I go back to Rogue One, and there's some things that I never felt like were fully fleshed out on that first viewing. And there's not a problem with that, if I'm being totally honest. I don't mind that. But when it's an original film, you have a lot more to lose than the fact it's set in a Star Wars world. And I did wonder, how am I going to be able to interact with these characters? Am I going to gravitate towards the story? And I was. Annette Bening, I have to say, is an absolute standout in this film. I didn't know she was going to be in this. Not Annette Bening, sorry, Alison Janney. I didn't know she was in this film. And the moment she popped up, I was like, there's a presence. It's a military role as well, which is great. We haven't really seen that before. I had a lot of comparisons to Avatar watching this film at the cinema. Certain sequences, and I think a big thing is what Gareth Edwards has done throughout his career. He's so good at shooting in scale, and I think that's a really, really underrated technique that's not spoken about enough within the industry. And I also think it's something that not enough films explore, is how much more interesting a film can be is just based off the scale. And I'm not talking story or characters, I'm talking how the film is shot, how it's operated, how it functions. And with the directions, one of the reasons this has leapt above other things for me is reading into some of the behind the scenes of this film, that they essentially shot the film first, did the edits, then sent it to ILM to basically just do all the CGI they wanted. It saved millions shooting on location. They had a small crew. Like Rogue One, guerrilla filmmaking is the term they kept calling it, where almost anything can be used in this film. The CGI, the visual effects, to me has already won the Oscar. I'd be really surprised if anything pips it to this. I just sat there again looking at this film saying, how has this cost $80 million? This looks better than almost anything I've seen in the last year. I'm going to make another Avatar comparison. It's probably the best film visually since Avatar. I know that we've been robbed of getting Dune this year as well, but I was just blown away. And I certainly had District 9 vibes as well. I mentioned familiarity earlier. There's a lot of films this is not pulling from, but this fits science fiction as a whole, like a traditional science fiction film. And that's before we actually delve into the themes of this. And I know the big talking point is AI. We're in a very trying place at the moment within the industry. It's almost going to be not a moral battle for the years to come, but it's, this big thing that how do we work around this advancing, developing technology. And this film being set, not now set in sort of 50, 60 years time, really lends itself to that sort of storytelling. And I like the fact that this one is challenging these themes. It isn't the same film I've seen before, where it's like, oh look, robots bad, humans great. It's not Terminator 2. It's not any of that sort of stuff we've seen. It's far more aligned to actually a film like Her, which I didn't think I'd be thinking of. But when you can take this new technology and do something with it from a story mechanic, give it a purpose and put it on a platform, in this case a blockbuster film, and letting it go. And I think it was a really interesting approach that this is front and centric, that it wasn't delayed. It wasn't, again, I guess with the SAG strikes, the WGA strikes, AI is a big part of that, and AI fundamentally can be a humongous problem. This isn't a video to be looking at AI. But a big telling point for me is, how does this film tackle this, given the context of AI? And it does so much more than I thought it could and would. So that's a big thing. If you're curious about that side of it, you're going to be in for a blast. But more importantly, if you just want to go to the cinema, you want to watch a big film, I'm not talking Fast and Furious, switch your brain off. I'm talking if you want an investing film on the big screen that's going to have you entertained from start through to end, that you might come out of a completely different emotional response to, this is one for you to be watching. I'm going to have to cut this review short because I'm scared I could genuinely go on for another hour. That's how much fun I've had with this. I'm waiting for the second viewing. I want to buy a gallery book. I want to buy all of it. I want to know the behind the scenes. The behind the scenes I have seen is great. I haven't mentioned the Hans Zimmer score. There's some interesting stuff behind the scenes on the almost an AI score, which was basically ended up being a Hans Zimmer soundtrack. And then they just went and got Hans Zimmer instead, which is entertaining. And there's a few great moments. I'll be listening to it properly on Friday. But as far as a spoiler-free review goes, I just have to end it telling you all to go watch this at the cinema. Not because we're going to do a spoiler discussion. This film needs to be seen on the big screen. But more importantly, this film needs support. If you're someone that sits at home and moans saying there's no good films out, if you sit there and moan saying no one makes new things anymore, you have to make the effort to go to the cinema to watch them. And if it doesn't work for you, great, it doesn't work for you. And I'm very curious to hear from those people, because I also want to know, if it doesn't work for them, what do they think of the film as a whole? Did they still enjoy parts of it and whatnot? So it's a really interesting debate this film's going to have. It's a very important film. It's a budget of 80 million. I really hope it does well at the box office. A lot of people do. I don't want to sit here talking about sequels, but I did, watching the film, I was so impressed with the visuals so much. I just did sit there for a moment and think, you know what? This would make an incredible, not franchise, but I'd love to see games set in this world. What they've created from an original standpoint was so exciting to me as a viewer. I'm not saying this is a Star Wars where a 3-year-old's going to watch it and say, I want to live here. It's not that at all. But there is something unique about shooting in Asia, bringing in the modern side of it. Obviously, we're in the Western world. We know how advanced a lot of Asia is, and that's a big part of the plot, is that technological advancements of sort of East versus West. It delves into that in a really interesting manner too, and the typical American capitalism, all that sort of stuff. there's a lot I can talk about. There's a lot I'm going to save for the spoiler discussion. So this is going to round up my review. I hope this made sense. I hope you're impressed by how much I'm hyping this film. I hope I'm not overhyping it, but it is one I really do hope you'll get the chance to see on the big screen when it does release later this week. And alongside that, there's a lot of other things happening on the channel. I've mentioned Star Wars a lot today. I'm recording this at like 12:30 in the morning. Ahsoka airs in like an hour and a half. I've got work in like 5 hours. But there will be a live discussion tonight for the Ahsoka Part 7 review. We've got Finch reviews every Monday. I mentioned that in the film festival. We've got our monthly video show. There's a lot happening. It's getting busy. It's great to be back at the cinema, and it's great to be supporting an original film such as this. So I'm a very happy Gareth Edwards fan. I can go home and sleep, have a great time, get ready to watch this film again on Friday, and I hope you all get the chance to see it as well. So thank you all for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.